Well, that's right, boys and girls. It's time once again to watch me play Quake and rant about my day and everything else. Today I want to discuss something. I want to discuss my views on city police, state highway patrol, sheriff, so on and so forth. And this applies primarily to police. It doesn't apply to sheriffs and sheriff deputies because those are elected positions. That's why my views don't really apply to them. But it pretty much applies to all of the what I consider standing military that's put in place to control the citizenry, which is the city police, state highway patrol, FBI, fucking NSA, TSA, you name it. There's a reason why they're called officers, because those are military titles. Okay? And not sheriffs or deputy sheriffs, which are elected positions that are actually accountable to the citizenry and not put in place by the government to enforce military edict on the citizenry. Anyway, so over the Easter weekend, I was invited to my father's for Easter dinner. And we got into it over something that happened to my brother, my youngest brother. And being that I had no intention on running the event, running the dinner, or, smashing the veneer porcelain of their reality, what they consider reality. Because let's face it, most of what the boomer generation was taught is exactly that. It was put in place by the government to carry favor for the government. And most of my generation and younger generations are well aware of the fact that the government is not there to help you, just as the police and the State Highway Patrol and these other agents of the government are not there to help you. They are there as collection agents and enforcers. They are military enforcers. They are a standing military, which, if I remember right from the Constitution, is illegal. But they are put in place to enforce their edict on the citizenry. Not the agencies of the government, not the bureaucrats, not the politicians, the citizens. And that is what I have against the police. Okay? For my dad's wife who asked, what do you have against the police? Well, I don't know. Maybe because they're a standing military that was put in place to control the citizenry and are not really accountable to the citizenry whatsoever because they're not elected. They're put in place by unelected bureaucrats to enforce their edict with military power. That's kind of what I have against the police. So, on that note, that's really all I can or will say about it. I mean, they're not accountable to the public, and they are essentially unelected bureaucrats. That's what they are. They're there. They're unelected bureaucrats put there in place to enforce their edict, their law on the citizenry. Because you notice, none of these people in government, they're not getting locked up, basically kidnapped and held for ransom, bail. You're being locked up and you're being kidnapped and held for ransom until your family pays your bail, pays your ransom. Because police are unelected military. They're a military power that was put in place, standing army that was put in place to control the citizenry by unelected government and bureaucrats. Because the government does whatever it wants and isn't held accountable for anything. It could take your land, lock you up. Government just does whatever it wants because it does it with military force. It's done by military force. That's why they're called officers, because it is a military title. They are military, a standing fucking military in the U.S. As opposed to like sheriffs and deputy sheriffs, who are elected officials. Deputies, not so much. Deputies are actually the proxy of the sheriff. And that's what I have against police. Because in my opinion, they're completely illegitimate. They shouldn't exist. According to the Constitution, they shouldn't exist. But they use the military power that they have to control the citizenry, so there's nothing you can really do short of going to war with them, which, despite everything, despite me not particularly caring for Antifa, at least Antifa has that much right. I mean, I'm not a Democrat and I'm not a Republican, and frankly, I'm not a real big fan of Antifa either, or BLM, but in my opinion, that's something that they actually have right, although I don't care for how they went about it. I mean, in my opinion, you don't go around burning shit down. That causes issues within the citizenry itself. But if they want to protest, just protest. That's one thing. When you start firebombing police stations, even if they are unelected bureaucrats, that's still, you shouldn't go around firebombing people's shit. The sheriffs and the deputy sheriffs need to come in and fucking put an end to you. Now I have no problem with deputy sheriffs, if necessary, shooting somebody, especially if you're, causing issues. Because technically, they are an extension of the citizenry, and citizenry is supposed to have right to self-defense and defend themselves and their property. But that's what the Second Amendment's there for. So you can defend yourself, your country, and your property. Because your property is an extension of yourself, and your country is an extension of your property, in my opinion, even though the government would have you think otherwise. Because by military force, they take whatever they want. And that's where the police and the deputies and the sheriffs and the FBI and all that come in. They are the unelected bureaucrats' military force. That's why you have all these IRS agents that are being hired and armed. They, on the other hand, are the military arm of the bankers. Because, of course, the banks needed their own military to fight against the citizenry, so they can collect their illegal taxes. Taxes on that never should exist to begin with. It didn't exist 100 years ago. It didn't exist until they put a central bank in there and started screwing people over. A central bank that is now trying to screw us with a CBDC, when in general, cash in general is technically illegal because it's not coined. They say, oh, well, it's made by the U.S. Treasury. No, it says it's enforced by military edict, enforced by these bureaucrats, because the bankers are essentially bureaucrats. They have a deal with the government, which is bureaucrats, for you to use their coinage so they can collect taxes, which is essentially robbing you of the value of your value, period, of your work, of your property, everything else, with taxes, to feed their meat grinder for a currency that shouldn't exist under our Constitution. Plain and simple. I mean, let's face it. This government and the bureaucrats in it and the politicians in it have fucking shredded our Constitution to nothing. The only ones that really remain viable right now are the Second Amendment, which they're trying to do away with, and some of the First Amendment, which they have more or less done away with by proxy. I mean, there's almost no freedom of speech anymore. The social networks and stuff on the internet don't give a shit about it. The news agencies don't give a shit about it. They're not actually news. They're not actually reporters. They're propagandists. What can be said there? I mean, they just here recently, the other day, arrested someone who was in the military for revealing state secrets. No, he pointed out to the citizenry that the military and the government. He was worked for the military, and he released supposedly classified documents. No, they weren't really classified. Okay, did the citizenry classify them? Not really. The government bureaucrats classified them. The bureaucratic state and their military went after him and are imprisoning him now, because they're enforcing their edict through military power. What did he do? He pointed out to the citizenry that they're getting screwed over by and by the government is performing illegal searches and wiretapping in them and the like. The citizenry being screwed over by the government. He pointed it out, and now he's paying the price for that. Which just goes to show that, you know, standing army. The citizens are held. He was a citizen. He's being held account by the unelected bureaucrats of the fucking government. Because our government is long corrupt. It's been corrupt for more than 100 years now. That's why you can't trust anybody. 90% of these people in government. Half of them aren't elected. They're installed. Just like the rest of the bureaucrats, they're installed. You look at these big blue cities. They're installed. So we really do have a banana republic at this point. That's my view. If it gets me shot by some military agent of the government, fine.